I came home from the military, but my family had disappeared. The front door was unlocked. That was the first thing that stopped me. 3 years in the desert, 3 years of kicking down doors in Fallujah and Ramadi, and the one door I never thought I'd have to force was my own. My hand hovered over the brass knob, still warm from the August sun, and I felt something cold slide down my spine that had nothing to do with the Nebraska wind. "Sarah?" My voice cracked against the silence of the porch. "Kids?" I stepped inside, and the smell hit me. Not the vanilla candles Sarah always burned, not the mac and cheese my daughter Emily made every Tuesday, not even the dog. Just dust. Stale air. The kind of emptiness that makes a house feel like a museum of a life that ended when nobody was looking. The living room was exactly as I'd left it, down to the coffee mug on the side table, the one with the chip I'd promised to replace. The family photos still hung crooked on the staircase wall. Our wedding day at the Omaha courthouse, Emily's kindergarten graduation in Lincoln, little Jake holding his first trout at Lake McConaughey. But the calendar on the fridge stopped at March 14th, 3 months ago. 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days, if you wanted to be exact about it. I'd been counting the days until my discharge since the moment my boots hit Afghan soil. I checked my phone again. No new texts. Sarah's last message, sent 3 hours ago when my plane touched down in Omaha. "Can't wait to see you, soldier. Drive safe. We love you." I walked through the kitchen, my combat boots echoing too loud on the linoleum Sarah had picked out during my first deployment. The back door stood open, screen door banging gently against the frame in the wind. The swing set I'd built last leave sat motionless in the yard, the chains rusted, the slide covered in leaves. Jake's bicycle lay on its side in the grass, the training wheels still attached even though he'd begged me to take them off before I left. "Sarah!" Louder now, panic threading through my voice. "Emily! Jake!" I checked the bedrooms. Emily's unicorn poster still covered the walls, her purple bedspread thrown back like she'd just gotten up for school. Jake's room smelled like the cinnamon air freshener he insisted made it smell like a bakery. Their closets were full, their shoes lined up by the door, toothbrushes in the bathroom holder, hair ties on Sarah's vanity. Everything was here, everything except them. Or, I called the police from Sarah's phone, the landline we kept because her grandmother in Kearney didn't trust cell phones. Officer Dan Morrison showed up 20 minutes later, a guy I'd gone to high school with in North Platte, back when we were both too young to understand what war would do to one of us. "Jack," he said, not quite meeting my eyes, "when did you get back?" "Today, an hour ago. Dan, where's my family?" He looked at the photos on the wall, the dust on the coffee table, the calendar frozen in time. "You talked to Sarah recently? Like, really talked to her?" "Every Sunday. Video calls. The kids would show me their homework, their new dance moves, their loose teeth." My throat tightened. "She sent me cookies for my birthday. Oatmeal raisin, the ones her mom used to make. They arrived last month." Dan pulled out his notebook, but he wasn't writing anything. "Jack, there's no easy way to say this. Sarah and the kids, they didn't disappear. They left." The room tilted. "Left? What do you mean left? This is their home. I'm their home. 3 months ago, March 14th, neighbor saw a moving truck. Sarah told Mrs. Patterson she was going to stay with family for a while. Said you'd understand when you got back." "When I got back?" My voice rose, cracking the stillness of the house. "She never said a word. Not in the calls, not in the letters, not in a single goddamn email. Jack." Dan's hand on my shoulder, the same way he'd steadied me when we found his brother after the car accident senior year. "There's more. You need to sit down." I didn't sit. I couldn't. My legs had carried me through firefights and IED fields, but they wouldn't hold me now. "Tell me." "Sarah filed for divorce. 3 months ago. Served the papers to your JAG office. She got a restraining order, Jack. Said she was afraid of what you'd do when you came home. Said you'd changed. That the man who left for Afghanistan wasn't the man who called her from Bagram." The words didn't make sense. They were English, they were sentences, but they were a language I didn't speak. Changed? I sent her my entire paycheck. I wrote her love letters. I learned to crochet in a foxhole so I could make Jake a scarf for Christmas. "I know, man." Dan looked at my hands, the ones that had held rifles and tourniquets and newborn puppies for Emily. But she told the judge you'd threatened her, in your letters. She showed them copies. I lunged for the hallway, for the shoebox under our bed where Sarah kept every letter I'd ever written her. The box was gone. The space under the bed was empty except for a single dust bunny and a faded sock. She took them, I whispered. She took everything. I spent that night on the living room floor surrounded by ghosts. The couch where we'd conceived Jake during that thunderstorm. The rug where Emily had taken her first steps. The window where Sarah had stood waving until my car disappeared down the dirt road 3 years and a lifetime ago. I read through our text history until my eyes burned. The Sunday calls, the I love yous, the photos of snowmen and science fair projects. Nothing threatening, nothing angry. Just a man trying to hold on to the only thing that kept him human in a place that wanted to strip it away. At 3 a.m. I found it, buried in my email spam folder, marked as junk by some overzealous filter, an email from Sarah, sent March 10th, 4 days before the calendar stopped. Jack, I can't do this anymore. The person who answers when you call, I don't know him. The things you said last time, about the village, about what you had to do, you sounded like you enjoyed it. You sounded proud. I'm scared of that man. I'm scared for our children. Please, get help. Don't come home angry. I can't let them see what you've become. I read it 10 times. 20. The village. The raid that went wrong. The insurgent who'd fired from the window. The civilian who'd stepped into the crossfire. The silence afterward that lasted longer than the gunfire. I'd told Sarah about it because she was my wife, because she'd held me through boot camp and my father's funeral and every nightmare before the desert, because I thought sharing the weight would make it lighter. But I hadn't been proud. I'd been hollow. I'd been trying to explain how a man could do terrible things and still wake up the next morning and shave and drink coffee and pretend to be human. I'd been asking her to see me, really see me, and tell me I was still the boy she'd married behind the VFW hall in North Platte. She'd heard something else. She'd heard a monster. I found them on Facebook. Sarah's sister in Denver had posted a photo last week. Sarah and the kids at Red Rocks, smiling in the Colorado sun. Emily had grown 2 inches. Jake had lost his front teeth. Sarah looked tired, the lines around her eyes deeper, but she was smiling that smile that had made me drive 3 hours just to ask for her number at the county fair. I drove to Denver the next morning, 11 hours straight through, fueled by gas station coffee and the kind of desperation that doesn't care about speed limits. I pulled up to the sister's house, a modest bungalow in Aurora, and sat in my truck for an hour, rehearsing what I'd say, practicing the calm, the kindness, the proof that I was still me. The door opened before I knocked. Sarah stood there in yoga pants and an old concert t-shirt, the one I'd bought her at the Nebraska State Fair. Her hand flew to her mouth. Jack, oh God, Jack, you can't be here. The order... I know, I said, keeping my hands where she could see them, the way I'd learned to approach frightened civilians. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm not here to take anything. I just need 5 minutes. Please, Sarah, 5 minutes to understand what I did wrong. The kids appeared behind her, Emily's eyes wide, Jake clutching his mother's leg. They looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was the mailman or a distant cousin or someone they'd seen once in a dream. Uncle Mike said you were sick, Emily said quietly. He said you had a sickness in your brain from the war, and that's why we had to leave. He said you might hurt us. The ground shifted beneath me. Emily, baby, I would never... 5 minutes, Sarah cut in, her voice steel wrapped in trembling. On the porch. Kids, go inside. Now. She told me everything. How my calls had grown darker, how I'd described the raids with a flatness that terrified her, how I'd stopped asking about her day and started cataloging every enemy I'd killed, how I'd sent her a photo of my trophy, a knife I'd taken off a dead insurgent, and told her it was better than any souvenir from the mall. I didn't know you anymore, she said, tears streaming down cheeks I'd kissed 1,000 times. I kept waiting for my husband to come back on the line, but it was like talking to a ghost wearing his face. And then you sent that email about the village, about how they deserved it, and I packed the kids that night. I couldn't let them grow up with a father who'd become what you were describing. The village, I repeated, the word tasting like sand. Sarah, I wasn't proud of that. I was trying to tell you I was broken. I was trying to ask for help. Then why did you sound so happy? She whispered. Why did you laugh when you talked about the explosion? Because I'd been crying. Because the laugh was the only sound I could make that wouldn't be a scream. Because war teaches you to hide your horror in humor, your grief in bravado, your humanity so deep inside that even you forget where you buried it. I have PTSD, I said, the words foreign and heavy. I've had it since the first deployment. I thought I could handle it. I thought if I just kept going, kept being strong, it would go away. But it was changing me, Sarah, and I was so afraid of being weak that I never told anyone. Not my CO, not the chaplain, not the one person who could have helped me see what I was becoming. She looked at my hands, the ones that had held her through labor and through grief and through every ordinary Tuesday. The man in those calls, he wasn't you. He was a version of me that didn't know how to be scared without being angry. A version that thought sharing the darkness would make it lighter instead of spreading it to the people I loved most. I reached into my pocket, slow and deliberate, and pulled out the discharge papers. I got help, Sarah. 3 months of therapy at Walter Reed. I started talking to someone the day after you left. I didn't know you'd gone, but I knew something was wrong with me. And for the first time, I was brave enough to admit it. I showed her the certificate from the VA, the recommendation letter from my therapist, the journal I'd kept, every page filled with the things I should have said instead of the things I'd seen. I can't undo the calls, I said. I can't unsay the things that made you afraid, but I can be different now. I am different, and if you never want to see me again, I'll respect that. I'll sign whatever you want. But please, don't let the kids think their father is a monster. Let me be a man who got lost and found his way back. Even if I'm not your husband anymore, let me be their dad. Sarah didn't say anything for a long time. The Colorado sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded me of Nebraska sunsets. Finally, she stood up and opened the front door. Jake, she called. Emily, come here. They emerged slowly, suspicious, like deer approaching a campfire. Sarah looked at me, then at them, and made a decision that would define the rest of our lives. Your dad came a long way to see you, she said, and he has something to say. I knelt down, my knees cracking on the concrete, and looked into the eyes of the two people who'd kept me alive through mortar fire and midnight patrols. I got sick while I was away, I said, the words simple and true. My brain got sick, the way someone's tummy gets sick, and it made me say and do things that weren't really me. But I went to the doctor, and I'm getting better. And I am so sorry that I scared you. That I scared your mom. You never did anything wrong. I did. And I'm going to spend every day making sure I never do it again. Jake looked at Emily. Emily looked at Sarah. Then Jake, my little boy who'd once cried because he stepped on a ladybug, stepped forward and wrapped his arms around my neck. Did you bring us anything? He whispered into my shoulder. I laughed, the real kind, not the hollow desert kind. I brought myself back, buddy. That's all I've got. Emily joined the hug, and then Sarah's hand was on my shoulder, tentative but present, and I understood something that no therapist could have taught me. Sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do isn't facing the enemy, it's facing himself. It's admitting he's broken and asking for help. It's choosing kindness over pride, humility over strength, love over the isolation that trauma wraps around you like a shroud. That was 2 years ago. Sarah and I didn't get back together, not in the way we were before. The trust was too damaged, the memories too sharp. But we built something new, something honest. I see the kids every weekend and every Tuesday for dinner and every holiday we can manage. I moved to Aurora, got a job counseling veterans at the VA, helping them find the words I couldn't find until it was almost too late. Sarah started dating again last year, a high school teacher who treats the kids well and makes her laugh in a way I haven't heard in a long time. I'm happy for her. Genuinely. Because I learned that love isn't possession. It's wanting the best for someone, even when the best isn't you. The house in Nebraska sold last month. I drove back one last time to clear out the boxes. Standing in that empty living room, I could still see the ghosts. The coffee mug, the calendar, the man who came home to find his family gone and thought his life was over. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The hardest chapter, maybe, but the most important. The one where I learned that disappearing isn't always about leaving. Sometimes it's about the person you become when you're too afraid to be found. To every veteran watching this, you are not your darkest moment. You are not the things you saw, or did, or had to survive. You are the person who chooses to get help, who chooses to come home to yourself, even when it feels like nobody is waiting. And to everyone else, check on your soldiers. Not just when they're overseas, but when they come back. The war doesn't end when the plane lands. Sometimes that's when it really begins. Subscribe for more emotional American stories. We're here every week with true tales of resilience, redemption, and the extraordinary strength of ordinary people living American lives. Hit that notification bell, leave a comment if this story moved you, and remember, kindness is always the strongest weapon we have. Good luck out there, and thank you for being part of this channel.